I'm Giovanni Vigna. I'm a professor in computer science at UCSB. And what I've been working on pretty much all my academic life is security in general. And what I'm going to tell you today is what I've been doing in the recent past, and which is mostly related to malware. I don't know if you're probably familiar with the side effects of malware. Maybe your computer has been infected or your password has been stolen. Oops. My machine died, go away, please. So we work really with issues that touch the everyday life of people. And I'll start telling you about the scenario of malware out there. There's been a revolution in the ways attacks are performed in terms of malware. As you probably know, the very first form of malware was more like vandalism. You would get this malware that would ruin your computer, that would move from one host to another, like viruses that would attach to other executable. And they were followed by worms, which were sort of like independent programs that were able to replicate across computer. And that was the first time that malware appeared as with the ability to self-replicate and its own self. Soon, at the beginning, malware was pretty much vandalism, give you credit in the hacker community. Being a good malware writer was cool, at least when I was young. But then people start realizing that there were other things you can do. Once you compromise, for example, through a worm, a large number of hosts, you can do interesting things. Like you can take down sites. And this is something that even today Anonymous is famous for asking people to join sort of like forms of protest by using denial of service attack against MasterCard, Visa, or whoever they decide is the target of the day. Soon, the cyber criminals realized that they could also make money out of this. And this has been the immense shift in this world, moving from, we're going to break in a bunch of computer, we're going to be a nuisance, we're going to be a pain in the neck, to, hey, we're going to make money out of this. And this shift was mainly coming from Eastern Europe. So what happened in Russia, they have fantastic school, great education, no jobs. So they have great computer scientists, they get out of school, and they have nothing to do. But also they have a very lenient security policy, physical security, meaning that police won't come knocking on your door and taking you out at night if you break in some computers, probably because they're behind the curve a little bit. And this created a very elaborated, very sophisticated marketplace for phishing, scamming, and similar things, often organized in the form of botnets, which are actually large amount of computers that get compromised and under the control of a single entity, usually a person called a bot herder or a computer gang that has some kind of idea of what to do with all these computers. Usually it's running scamming, like in phishing attacks, running operation to steal password. For example, at a certain point, my security group was able to steal from this Russian hacker gang a botnet composed of 180,000 computers. So for 10 days, these 180,000 compromised computers were selling their password, credit cards, and banking information to us at UCSB. We collected around 60 gigabytes of personal information, banking accounts, postal card accounts, and we worked with the FBI to call all these banks and make sure that these accounts were actually shut down or sanitized. And we worked with the FBI because, of course, we didn't realize, really, when we did this experiment, we didn't realize what we would have to deal with. But the moment we found out, of course, we called the FBI. We had also called the Defense Intelligence Agency because there were some .mil accounts associated with that were compromised. So immediately you want to talk to these people. And one fun story is that the FBI immediately told us, keep on doing whatever you're doing, but do not give us the data. Because for them, the moment that we give them compromised data, they have to open 180,000 cases. And so they were like, we're going to work with you guys. You do the work of, working with the data, telling us what accounts to shut down and so forth. But, we have to keep this separate. Very interesting insight in what these cyber criminals do, combined especially with our view of what we call the underground economy. These people collect these accounts, collect credit card data, and they sell it on the black market like any other commodity. They even fight with each other to give you discounts for big numbers. And even their infrastructure, their botnets, they rent them out. They're like, hey, you want 500,000 hosts for 2 hours? It's going to be $12,000. And suddenly you have 500,000 hosts, and you can do whatever you want with it. You roll your binaries on it, and you decide what to do. You want to go on tweet and have 500,000 new Twitter followers? Here you are. You can do that. Okay. This crime has become a commodity, and it's very difficult to combat in a way because it's an international problem. A computer that is compromised here is probably compromised using an exploit that is hosted on a site in India but is managed by a guy in St. Petersburg, and suddenly you need the Interpol to be involved with 4 different states, 2 of which don't even have legislation really about computer crime, which make things incredibly complicated. Of course, this is not the worst part. The worst part is when people decided that, hey, we don't have only to do these opportunistic attacks where we collect as many computers as we can. Sometimes I really want to hurt somebody, you in this case, okay? And in that particular case, you do a targeted attack. So you want, for example, to be able to have the account of a UCSB or a Santa Barbara City College student compromised because they can have privileged access to some kind of information. So I send him an email that appears to come, I go on his Facebook page, I find who his friends are, there's somebody called, Larry, and I say, hey, I'm Larry, wait, tonight we're going to go here, and I put a link. Say, oh yeah, this is Larry. And he clicks on the link because he trusts Larry. Never trust email. Email is the stuff that you can, unless it's cryptographically signed, which I'm sure that none of you do, maybe one exception or two. Unless it's cryptographically signed, email is pure baloney. Anybody can be anybody. I can show you right now how to send any email appearing to be anybody in the world. Do not trust the from of an email. Do not, okay? Don't click on links unless you're absolutely sure what you're doing. So this targeted attack have been targeting Google, RSA, very big company. And recently we have been observing another, in some ways, disturbing evolution of malware, which is the use of malware for nation-state attacks. So malware is just now not anymore a tool to do financial frauds, but also to actually attack a state. The most clear example was Stuxnet, which was developed by the U.S. administration in collaboration with the Israeli government, and was targeted to destroy centrifuges that were enriching nuclear material in Iran. And there is even now a book about it. It was, I think, Operation. It's not Operation Olympics. It was something like that. But it was, describes every single decision that went into creating this malware that would wait and simply every time it would infect a computer, we'll try to look around and say, am I connected to this particular Siemens controller that knew exactly the model and the version that was used in this particular enrichment plant? And whenever they find, oh yes, I'm here, okay, they start spinning the centrifuges so far they would destroy them. Okay, and according to some evaluation, they put the nuclear program of Iran a year and a half past. So they delayed over a year and a half days without having to shoot anybody, without having to send anybody in harm's way. In a way, it's a brave new world when we have on one end we have the drones, which are a different story, and on the other hand we have malware. But these are way in which new wars are played today in a remote fashion with very little personal involvement, and there is a whole story about that. Another evolution that we have seen is in the way people attack each other. Traditionally, attacks, what we observed until a few years ago was like, you are in your network, you're protected by your firewall, by whatever, and people are trying to get in with attacks, exploits, buffer overflows, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, all these things were a way for outside people to get in. And, we got pretty good at creating barriers, I mean, it's always impossible to solve the problem of human stupidity. But, for everything else, we have good firewalls and intrusion detection systems, all the cool stuff. The problem is that people realized that, and they decided that the new way to attack people was to lure people into contacting malicious endpoints. By doing this, the attack is actually from the inside out and not anymore from the outside in, and a lot of the protection that we're used to are not effective anymore. And so we see an enormous amount of compromises, a map that I like to, and it's actually pretty outdated, that shows every reported incident in which US company have lost money because of this kind of attacks, either targeted or opportunistic. But we're talking about from small businesses, so there could be a car dealer that loses $60,000. You know what these people do when they break into a machine and they realize that they are in a company? They get to their payroll and they put fake people on the payroll. Okay, they add 10 new employees. Okay, and these are pretty large companies, so it takes a while to understand. Oh, who is John Smith and who's John 2 Smith and John 3 Smith? Okay, so what do they do with this information? Well, they put a nice ad saying, hey, do you want to work from home and make $4,000 a month doing absolutely nothing? And, some of you are like, oh, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Nothing, $4,000 a month, I can do it. So what they do, they break into these businesses, they put you on payroll, they give you the money, you go to a bank, you get the money out, you are money mule, you get the cash in your hand, you keep half, and the other half you send with Western Union in Kazakhstan. Okay? Western Union is used by all the cyber criminals because it's impossible to revert. Once the money's out, it's out. So there is some Kazakh or some Ukraine dude who's getting rich. After a while, they get to you, the FBI or other thing. You lose everything because you have to pay oftentimes all the stuff that you have been receiving because it was a fraud, even though you didn't know. Everything is taken away from you. It's horrible. Okay? Sometimes you might get away with it, but I wouldn't suggest incurring, in the wrath of the FBI for this type of frauds. They can be pretty nasty. So what I suggest, whenever people tell you that you can make $4,000 doing nothing, trust me, you are going to end in jail, or you're going to end broke. So don't do it. But this is, just the low-end level. There are gigantic businesses that are killed by stuff like that. Google was attacked by the Chinese government. They did the Aurora operation to compromise the email accounts of civil rights activists. Boeing was attacked. Lockheed Martin was attacked. In Lockheed Martin, they stole the design of a jet fighter that cost more than $50 million just to design. And they have to throw the design out of the window because now somebody in China has the blueprint of the new jet fighter from Lockheed Martin, and they have to redesign it completely because you cannot fly something that some enemy or perceived enemy has the blueprint of. So this is a gigantic problem. And the problem is that actually dual. It's not just the bad stuff, the malware, it's also the badware. So the stuff that is right there that is not good enough. What do I mean by that? So it starts somewhere in a dark basement in Russia. There is a guy that goes around and goes to Surfline. Who reads Surfline every morning? Check out. You guys are in computer science, I can tell. You don't surf. Surfline is a perfectly harmless website where you can go and check, surf, what's going on. Suppose that there is a bug there. Some developer, not a malicious guy, somebody who was not just good enough, put together some broken code. What happens? They launch an attack. In this case, it's called a SQL injection. You don't have to know really what happens. But the result of that is there is an iframe here that you will not see. It's a 0 width, 0 height, little iframe. But what happened is that now, when a user goes to visit this website, okay, because of that iframe, gets redirected to a different website. And that site redirects the browser to a new website, and to a new website. And this website is really the bad guy who would say, hey, who are you? And understands that your browser has a bug. because there's an outdated version of Flash that actually is exploitable. Say, cool, you have an outbroken, I'm going to send you some nasty piece of JavaScript. Here it is, and now you're mine. You have become a bot. This is 95% of all the compromise that we see on the internet follow exactly this pattern. It's called a drive-by download. You go to a website, absolutely the most harmless website that you always went to. Somebody broke into and made it part of a malware distribution system. As a result, now you go to your bank, and suddenly your banking data gets shipped in Russia, or you get used to spam the internet, do denial of service attacks, until somebody decides that that enough, and your ISP pulls the plug or something like that. Okay, so it's really bad. Current state of affairs is horrible. Antivirus don't work. Firewalls don't work for the reason that I told you, because now it's people going to the bad stuff. It's not the bad stuff attacking you anymore. And also, we need something automated to understand what's bad out there. And so I will tell you very briefly, after this long introduction, what we do in my research group in order to address this. The basic idea that we have is that we have to be able to continuously monitor what's happening on the internet that is bad, so that we can tell you in real time not to go there. And people already do that. I know how many of you are familiar with Google Safe Browsing. If you have a Firefox or Chrome, you go to a website sometimes say, hey, you shouldn't go there, you're going to be harmed. This is Google telling you that you shouldn't go there because they know that that place is bad. And Google does a pretty decent job at identifying these bad sites, but there is more that needs to be done. And something that Google understood very soon and made them win against Yahoo is that you cannot have humans in the loop. Right now, the way we combat malware Sophos has 11,000 people in the Philippines every day looking at malware, understanding what the malware does, and writing signatures for this malware. We process around 100,000 samples a day. Different pieces, new pieces of malware a day, 100,000. Okay? You cannot put people in front of this amount of data. You have to have some automated system. And that's what computer scientists do. Okay? They do algorithms. They automate stuff that other people did by hand before. So even in malware, we want to be the Googles of malware. So Google won against Yahoo because Yahoo had a bunch of people categorizing URLs. Say, oh, this is a car URL. Oh, this is a party URL. Oh, this is a C URL. And, Google says, screw that. We're going to have algorithms that are able to analyze the page, do semantic analysis of the content, and create indexes that are even better of those created by the human beings. So what we are out to do is to hunt, crack, track, and block. Hunt because we want to find these places that are bad. They're going to try to attack you. But once we found them, we want to take whatever they're sending to us in terms of bad JavaScript, bad malware, open it up, and understand what this malware does, and then we want to track. Because once we know that these guys are bad and we know how they operate, they're going to move very fast. And so we need to be able to follow them as they evolve on the internet. That's what we call the malscape, the malware landscape. And we want to be able to use all this information to block. So imagine that you have on your cell phone something that in real time tells you all the bad neighborhoods in the world. Okay? So wherever you are, you walk and say, don't turn left. Okay, oh, that's left. Okay. I'm going to go right. Okay? Because you know that behind the corner there is somebody ready to mug you. That would be awesome, That would be, the criminals will be out of commission. So let's start by hunting. So the problem with hunting is that you have to find these people. So they use a lot of techniques to convince you to visit their bad sites. Okay? However, they're not so easy to find. If you randomly search on the internet, guess how many URLs are going to attack you out of the ones that you visit? Any guess? 1 out of 10? Who says 1 out of 10? What of 100? 1 out of 10? Actually, it's 1 out of 1,000 if you're lucky. Otherwise, it's 1 out of 10,000. So they're not that many, statistically. However, criminals try to optimize the way in which they come to you by using the same reasoning that you do. So if Lindsay Lohan just crashed her car drunk against a wall, suddenly they search engine optimize all their bad side for keyword Lindsay Lohan. Okay? And they use a lot of different techniques to make sure to increase the probability to be presented to you when you do a search for a popular term. So we do exactly the same. Instead of search randomly the internet, we use exactly trending information, link information between pages, behavior of website to increase what we call the toxicity of a crawl. So we have developed techniques, a technique called evil seed, that actually allows you to crawl the internet with 20 times more toxicity than a normal human being. That means that with the same amount of resources, we can find 20 times more bad websites. So what do we do when we find a website? Well, we look at those with two different techniques. On one end, we try to analyze what the website does to you. And we have a tool called WebAwet, which is a portal. If you right now go to webawet.cs.ucsb.edu, you get a very nice, dorky web page, not very fancy, where you can put a URL. Once you put a URL there, we would go on your behalf to visit the URL, pretend to be vulnerable, entice the bad guy to send us their bad code, and we'll produce a report for you, telling you if it's good or bad. So whenever you get an email, please send us, go to this web page and send us what you do. What we use in order to detect are not signatures, because those don't work very well. They change too frequently. So we use two things called machine learning and anomaly detection. We use machine learning, mean that by crawling the internet, we learn what's normal, what are the things that we see most commonly in benign sites, and then with anomaly detection, we're able to reliably detect when something is very weird. So sometimes, even things that we've never seen before, we can say, hey, that's very weird, probably malicious. There was a question?
No, how long does it take to get a response back from WebAwet?
2 to 4 minutes. That would be.
Does that come to you then? If you send
It's a web place, so you do submit and you get back a report. You have to wait. We're always overwhelmed by requests. We try to provide as much of the service that we can, but we always are beyond capacity. We have a whole cloud dedicated to this. The other one is Anubis. Anubis, instead of looking at web pages, looks at executables. So we use this to analyze malware. Once the web page sent us the malware, we run it in Anubis, so it gets executed in a machine that pretends to be a vulnerable Windows XP machine, and we observe what the malware does and what the malware contacts. For example, to send secret information to. And then we say, oh, that probably is a bad guy. I just been contacted by a piece of malware. It's actually a bit more complicated than that because, for example, malware goes to google.com just to see if they have internet. It's their way to understand, am I connected to the internet? Open google.com. Oh, I got the Google page. Okay, I'm on the internet. Okay, you don't want to put google.com as one of the bad guys. Okay, so you have to do a little bit of analysis in order to understand. But the basic idea of these two tools is that you drive around the net, you get all this malware, you crack it open, you analyze, you look at how it works inside, you determine if it's good or bad, and you try to understand where they talk to. So then you have to track them, because people continuously change their behavior. Cyber criminals continuously change the way in which they operate. So knowing that somebody is using a particular host could be important for the next 2 hours. 2 hours later is a different endpoint. So you have to continuously have techniques that monitor the uptime of this bad site and track them as they move through the internet. This is a very challenging thing, and sincerely, I would say this is one of the most difficult problems. We don't have a good solution for this yet. There is a lot of research that will go into what we call, network agility. These guys are very good at moving continuously because the FBI plays whack-a-mole with the cyber criminal. The moment we identify that a endpoint is, serving child pornography, there is Interpol and FBI on the phone with the ISP saying, take that down. And they shut it down. And An hour later, it's somewhere else. And everything flows to that thing. Or there is a central for the exchange of credit card information. They shut it down, day after, pops up somewhere else. And sometimes they cannot even shut it down. Actually, there are these ISPs, they're called bulletproof ISPs, where these are service providers that are in specific areas, usually in the eastern part of Europe, and they just ignore requests to shut down computers. And so cyber criminals know that they can put hosts there, they pay a lot more, but they know that the Interpol shows up, these guys say, no, we're not going to do it. Who are you? You're the Interpol. Why should I listen to you? And they let the criminal do their work. So this is another problem. Oftentimes the solution is not just technology. Sometimes the solution is political. It requires agreements between nations, and it becomes really difficult to combat that. Actually, very recently, there's been a United Nations wrote a document about the internet how the internet is used for acts of terrorism. And one of the main problems is that the internet, who has jurisdiction over the internet? If you use that as a global tool to enact some act of violence, real or not real, can be just psychological, who is to blame? How are the United Nations going to be involved in retribution? So it's a very interesting problem that we will have to discuss for the time being, I guess. And then there is the final step, block. So now we have all this intelligence. Suppose that really we can find, before people gets there, we can find all the bad places, we can get all the malware, we can open it up, understand what it does, where it connects. So we see how all the bad guys move around. Now we can use this, what we call threat intelligence, to protect people. And safe browsing is one example. Another example is, preventing infections to even coming to your computer because you recognize them as such. You can actually block the malware from contacting the command and control. So what we call is locking the burglar in the safe. So you've been compromised. There is a thief in the house. But suppose that you can lock the thief within the safe. Then he's staying there with the money. Cannot do much. Yes, I mean, it's suboptimal. There's somebody banging on your safe saying, get me out of here. But if you keep it locked, your money is safe. Okay? And eventually you will find a way to get the bad guy out of the safe without compromising everything. So, but this is difficult. This is really hard. And that's why Google is not really there yet. We are not really there yet. But there is a whole group of researchers that are trying to get there. If we could play a whack-a-mole game where you always win, we could have the right response to this guy. So imagine a counter, because these guys are moving fast, and so we're playing whack-a-mole with them. But if we hit them every time and we're able to hit the mole, then we're good. Why not? This has become a robotic war between us and the cyber criminal. If we can win it, I'm willing to play it. We have resources. We have the Amazon cloud. Put a 300 more computer and take down half of the cybercrime. Okay? So it's something that we can do, but we need better algorithms, and that's why you guys have to come up with that. I'm almost done with my career. You guys are the guys who are going to invent the new super algorithm to stop all the crime. So this is just a summary slide that I use to present what we do. So what we want to do is identify what's malicious on the internet. And so what I told you in summary is that we know about some malicious places, and we look at Facebook, Dig, Twitter, and we put stuff in Appleseed that produces, as a result, a bunch of very nasty URLs. Okay? We take this and we actually crawl these URLs. We don't analyze them all with WebOS because they would be too expensive, so we have actually something called a profiler that rules out the benign pages that we don't care about, and we send the possibly malicious pages plus the pages that you're going to submit to WebOS. We're very interested in crowdsourcing this activity. Whenever you see a suspicious URL, send it to us. We are very grateful. Okay, and then we send it to WebOS or to other Honeycline, other analysis tool. They go on the website, they download the bad stuff, we give it to a newbies, and the basic result of that is information about the command and control sites, and at the very end of it we have more malicious pages and information about these threats, which the malicious pages go back into our large database of malicious pages that we use to do even more research, okay? And of course, our threat intelligence which become the basis for blocking or protecting networks. So, for example, we used to publish the we had this thing called FIRE. I don't remember exactly. It was a finding rogue networks, something like that. And we used this whole infrastructure to find out where the bad guys are in which ISPs, and then we would combine. We would create a list of the bad ISPs in the world. So if there is soft layer as most of the bad stuff, would be number one. The moment we put that on a web page, we started receiving phone calls from the ISP and say, I don't want to be number one on your shit list. What should I have to do to get better? So, well, start cleaning this and cleaning that. And we created an enormous amount of good connections with the ISPs because oftentimes they're not bad people. They're just, they're just business people. People come with a credit card to have a machine and they put it on. They don't monitor what they do. They respond to, reputation problems because you don't want to be, soft layer, that's where all the criminals are. I don't want my servers there. Then they start listening to you. So always think that, again, there is political, there is a law aspect to it, and there is also, of course, an economic aspect to it. What we need to do for tomorrow's malware? Well, we need to do a new type of analysis. I was telling you a little bit about the whack-a-mole. We need to be more agile. Right now, the way in which we analyze malware and we analyze attack is still very traditional. We look at malware, we open it up in a debugger. What is this malware doing? Oh, look, it's looking if you're connected to Wells Fargo, and in that case, injects a piece of HTML that will steal your password. Okay, I can put this signature, this countermeasure. This is not going to work. We need something that will be able to automatically not only analyze this piece of malware, understand automatically how it connects to the rest of the infrastructure, and automatically track and move the detection as the malware moves, okay? And this is something that we're not able to do really well right now. The other point, we see more and more malware that says, okay, unless I am in Brazil, I'm not going to do anything. So they really check the keyboard. And if the keyboard is a Brazilian keyboard, then they do something bad. Otherwise, they don't do anything bad. So it's sometimes very difficult to elicit bad behavior from these programs. And so we need a new way to analyze this thing. They're able to say, okay, I'm going to take this piece of malware and analyze it in this fake world that looks a lot like you are an engineer at Intel. Because for some reason we know that this is malware targeted to that particular environment. Again, we're not very good at that. You guys should come up with stuff that helps. And so this is a new arms race. The new arms race is the good guys trying to automate countermeasures against the bad guys. The bad guys are winning right now. But I'm pretty confident that we can at least make it a little more a little more fair battle if we put enough effort in it. And I think that there has been a lot of, especially lately with this movement towards nation-state war, people are starting to understand that cyber war, cyber security is something that we really need to take seriously. Of course, what can I do now? This is my 10 things you should always do. I don't know, are they 10? 8, no, 9 things you should always do. So keep your stuff updated. Use a browser that self-updates without asking you, can I update myself? Okay, that's really important. Almost every browser is moving towards that model. Do not install applications that come from who knows where. Okay, we did a whole study of fake antivirus. When you get this thing, oh, your machine is infected. Install me, I'm FooBar anti-malware, so that I can clean your computer. And then FooBar anti-malware is actually the malware, and it's called ransomware. We lock your computer until you pay, $28 to this criminals, use password management tools like LastPass. How many of you are using LastPass? See? Bad. It should be at least 50%. It should be 100% of the computer scientists, and should be at least 50% of the present people. Using password management tools, you don't have to reuse a password, you don't have to remember password, you don't have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for every single account. This is bad. You should do it. Two-factor authentication. How many of you use Gmail with two-factor authentication? Okay, now you're talking to me. This is the most important thing you can do. Even for banking, require two-factor authentication from your bank. Everybody in Europe does it. For some reason, in the US, where we have the best network, the best this, the best that, we are not able to get the most simple two-factor authentication technology. It doesn't cost anything. It's so easy to implement. For some reason, it's not available to everybody. Keep an eye on your bank accounts. You're going to have fraud. I got my credit cards got hacked all the time, and you cannot do anything. You go to a bar, you pay with your credit card, somebody take a swipe, you're gone. Okay? So you can be very safe, you get two-factor authentication, but your attention on your bills is always the most important thing. Backup, did I mention backup? And develop skills in security. I'm here to tell you, if you're in computer science, consider working in security. First of all, it's fun. Instead of optimizing an algorithm so a search in a graph is, in polynomial time a little better than the other one, you're going to fight cyber criminal. You're going to put people in jail, or help put people in jail. But, you're fighting, you're helping people so that their stuff doesn't get stolen. And your opponent is not a difficult problem, only is a human being that wants to harm you. It will send you programs that when they open, they try to, destroy the environment in which they are analyzed. It's very, you would be amazed at the stuff that we see from these guys. Sometimes, we open a piece of malware and we find written in FUCK Anubis, knowing that they took notice that we are analyzing them, they know who we are, and they send us samples, that are sort of like tantalizing us, like come and get us. Okay, so it's fun. But also, because of the type of problems that we have to deal, and this is actually, I'm finished. For the type of problems that we have to deal with, this is full of interesting computer science problems. Even if you take away the, cloak and dagger interest in cybercrime and this and that, the fact that we continuously have to automate program analysis, we have to automate network forensics, we have to automate, understanding the lifetime of domains on the internet. This is a field full of interesting problems for the computer science point of view. Not to mention that the moment you get on the market and you say, I know how to do forensics, I know how to analyze malware, I know how to, for example, understand the security posture of a network, you will find a job. People, Symantec, McAfee, Checkpoint, Intel, Sophos, Trend Micro, they come to me constantly say, do you have more graduates that know about security? And I can produce enough. And the moment they're graduated, they're gone in a second. Because it's the most sought after skill out there. Because it's very difficult to achieve. It's not something, you cannot open a book and become a security expert. It takes time, it takes, analysis and reading and going on the internet and discovering and testing and setting up your servers at home and break into those servers to see how it's done, and then break them again, then fix them, and then break it again, so that you understand what's going on. If you don't have a server at home that you have hacked into, it's not good. You should. Go set up a Linux machine at home, put a web application with a flaw, and then exploit it. Do a SQL injection. Go on the web, find Google, SQL injection. How does it work? It will tell you how to do it, and it's a good thing that you know how to do it. We need more locksmiths. Whenever I teach hacking classes, I say, oh, you're teaching people how to be criminals. No, I'm teaching people to be locksmiths. Because I don't want the next safe to be built by somebody who cannot pick a lock. Because they will not understand what are the problems in building secure safes, okay? So it's really important that you go out, you learn what the bad stuff is. Of course, there is no excuse for, hey, I hacked into the New York Times because I wanted to learn security. That you go to jail, and you should. Because A, you're stupid, and 2, because you committed a crime, okay? You can always set up the same identical environment in your home and do it in a safe environment and learn a lot from it. Especially if you do it with friends, you do competition, capture the flag, there are SARts, there are tons of stuff. We actually organize at UCSB the world's largest live security exercise called the ICTF. It's a capture the flag. We have 1,000 students from around the world just connect to UCSB and hacking the hell out of each other. And it's super fun. And people learn a lot by doing that. So if you want to check it out, you go to ictf.cs.ucsb.edu. The next one is going to be in March. Have a team from here. That would be great. And with this, I'm done. If there are any questions, I would love to hear what you think. Yes?
As far as your education goes, what would you recommend for students as far as, do you have any advice for students, I guess?
Okay, my advice for students is always delay entering the real world as much as possible. I am 43, I'm still not in the real world, and I love it. But that's not good advice, really. So, graduate. If you're, of course, if you have an engineering or computer science degree, that's fantastic. A lot of the extra skills that sometimes are not taught are really important. Knowing very well a scripting language like Python, fundamental. Most startup right now are Python-based. They do everything in either Python or Ruby or some kind of scripting language. Once you know well scripting language, you know all scripting languages. They're all the same. They're just syntactic sugar spread over it. But that's a basic concept. For example, understanding security, fantastic skill. And sometimes if a student comes to me and say, well, I had a first year student from computer science came to me and say, I have a startup, and we do a lot of this stuff as for the commercial world. And he came to me and say, I want to have a work experience, and I'm a first year's computer science student, so just right out of high school. But I used to install all the antivirus at my high school. I was the one responsible to track infection that come over, and it's now one of our best malware analysts. So it's really what you do in addition. Show that you always went above and beyond. People that look for employees, if you say, I graduated computer science, I did all my thing, I got a good GPA. Okay, it's pretty good. But if you say, I was in the Women in Science and Engineering group, and I organized this competition where people were exploring security problems, to me that's a glowing sign that this person is special. So do more. That's something, and put it in your curriculum vitae. You have a career center here that will tell you all about how to write a good curriculum. I'm laughing because that's my wife right there. So she works here.
I work in the career center.
Yeah, so go to her and ask her how to write a good curriculum vitae. Yes.
Kind of on the same topic, is there like a degree that either at UCSB or anywhere that's like computer science with an emphasis on like web security, or is it just they're all kind of, you take classes with like that class before computer science?
Okay, unfortunately, there is no such thing. So at the undergrad level, it's just computer science, and that's why I'm stressing these extracurricular activities. For example, at UCSB, we have a hacking group that meets every Wednesday, and there's a lot of this, doing crazy stuff that it's really interesting. A lot of the training that you would get to be a good security researcher, you get it by getting a master's. Because the grad class that I teach and the grad class that other of my security professor colleagues that are also security professors teach are in the grad level. So masters, it's great. I think if you don't want to be a researcher per se, in which case you should do the PhD, there is no question about it, but you just want to go one step further, get a master's. You will be exposed to more advanced stuff that are more fun. Yes?
Are there any certifications you recommend?
No. We love CISSP, MSP, Cisco P. I know. That's my point. But that's my point. In the hacker community, these things are seen like people who don't know what they do, and they try to put a label on it, saying that you go on a checklist and suddenly you know what security is. Security, I know it's very much an art in a way, because what I always tell people, when you want to, especially in vulnerability analysis, what you want to do, you want to take a piece of a software system, a network. You have to first of all understand what it does, understand what were the assumptions of the guy who put it together, what were these assumptions, and then do this oblique thinking and say, okay, these guys assume that every user has a username of max 24 characters. Let's put 2,000. Let's see what happens. Okay, this type of mindset and understanding how a network works and how you break it, you don't get it with a certification. You get it with experience. I mean, I would have somebody pen test my network that has been at a Linux user group more than somebody who has a CISSP whatever certification. But hey, in some, maybe at Raytheon, they really like it. I don't know. Yes.
What is aware of the mobile devices, and I many people using smartphone, tablet, and I think there's a growing, increasing trend about malware on
Yeah.
the smartphone.
Absolutely.
And we suggest
We actually, Anubis also has Andrubis, which is Anubis for Android. So you can actually submit Android application, it will be analyzed and will tell you what it does. And actually right now, I have a large grant that is sponsored by the Defense Advanced Research Agency, Defense Advanced Research Program Agency, the DARPA, that is exactly for this reason.
what
There
kind
are-
of device do you suggest to use for this?
I suggest use iPhones. I know, not because I'm paid by Apple, just because they have a tighter control on what gets on your thing. They decided to go for a model that say you can only buy applications that we vetted. And actually, we even broke the way in which they vet application. If you look at our PiOS thing, we demonstrated not really doing a good job. But they have tight controls. With the Google decided to go for open markets that let everybody develop applications, and so there is 100 times more malware for Android than there is for iPhone.
I get it.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to say what to do. My suggestion is always install application from reputable sources. And actually, funny that you mentioned that. Now Google is trying to move to a more restrictive model. So their voice is that this open marketplace is going to go away soon because they realize that they cannot handle it. So it's a big problem. Yes.
Any computer can be broken into?
I would say largely yes. Of course, it's the amount of effort that you put into it. I think Stuxnet is the perfect example. So Stuxnet is a piece of malware that was supposed to enter a computer that is not even connected to the internet. So these guys made an incredibly sophisticated piece of software that moved between USB keys. It would infect configuration file using for the CAD used for that particular, and eventually they got on that computer, disconnected from the internet, that was controlling those centrifuges. So I think that if you put, the NSA plus the Mossad intelligence software development part together to break into somewhere, they will.
Singapore was where they think it started, which is very close to Banda Aceh, which is the international cooling off point for jihadis.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah, they'd be flying in and out of Singapore.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, it's a chain reaction in a way, because once you have enough resources, you can destroy assumptions that we use. For example, we assume that the certificates that we use in our browser are not compromised. Okay, a year ago, DigiNotar, there was one of the certification authorities, got broken into in the worst possible way. And actually, there is a report that just came out from Foxity that describes how these guys penetrated this super secure network in the deepest possible way. And they start generating certificates for Google. So now you go to Google and you see the lock, HTTPS, whatever, but actually they're going through them and they see everything you do. And they stole tons of credentials. So, you know, if you can break into a digital, not a integrity.
So for a home computer user,
Yes.
you said antiviruses and firewalls aren't particularly good. I mean, it's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing. So
What
they're
would
not
you-
enough.
I mean, you really don't know if you're infected, or
No, you don't.
and there's really no way that, I mean, you don't have software that can try to analyze my computer.
No. I would say use Malwarebytes. Malwarebytes is one of the things that, you know, we suggested to people. Malwarebytes is, and Hijack This are two pieces of software that are very good at being up to date in counter identifying infections. But every time we identify somebody infected, we say restore the machine from scratch. That's the only way you can do it. And if you can't put Linux on it, you will never have a virus for the rest of your life. But that's a different story. Not many people are ready to use an open doc or, you know, open office stuff like that.
What was the second one that you just mentioned?
Hijack This. It's another tool. Yes.
So you mentioned you submit malware websites to the Google blacklist.
No, we don't.
Oh, you don't?
No.
So
I mean, we do something. We don't. We actually, Google doesn't like us very much because we've shown a few times that they're not very good at finding malware. So there is a love and hate relationship because we publish in the same conferences. We're both researchers. So the main web security guy there is Niels Provost, and of course we're friends, but frenemies in a way. You know, because sometimes we do research, they say, hey, look, Google is really not working out. You can get infected in all these ways. Like, you are not fair because we are trying to do this. Like, yeah, I mean, we do what we can. But yes.
I have
Yes.
the Trend Micro on my Android
Great.
and on my phone, my computer at home. But you're saying that Androbis would be something I would want to keep as
No.
No.
I'd say keep your Trend Micro. Andrubis is something that is more geared towards analysts. Okay. Is not, while WebOS can also use an everyday person, Andrubis is really for people that say, okay, I found this package, this APK, this Android application somewhere on the internet. What does it do? You send it to us, we explode it, we open it up, we tell you it touches this particular system calls, open these files. If you look at the report, you probably say, what? I mean,
Now, I always look at the URL on my emails and the websites. Is that sufficient?
well, I mean, in your emails, the URLs can be fundamentally of three types. Can be things that you click on and you have a drive-by download and your computer get compromised. So don't click on those.
No.
And then you have scam and phishing. Scams are classically, you know, Canadian pharmacy. Get Viagra chip, get, you know, Rolex, get with this and that scams. And there is phishing. You click on that and you go to some bank site or some, you know, oh, your Google password has expired, that type of thing. Those are the three things that we see. The last two, WebOS will not help you with because they're not really attacking you with malicious software. They're just trying to trick you into doing something stupid. We are not interested in that problem. Even other people are. I'm just saying that we don't look at that. We're interested in those URLs that will lead you to a bad site that bombards you with very malicious JavaScript that will try to take control of your machine.
So when I see the URLs jumping without my intention, then
That's bad. But
that's
usually,
what I want to
but usually those
Check it.
URLs, when you click on it, you will not notice anything wrong. You don't hear da 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 or anything like that. Everything looks absolutely normal. You go to the site that is, you know, cutekitties.com, and in the background, your computer is being ravaged. So the other thing is don't click.
In that situation, how long would it take before you knew that your computer had been ravaged?
Depends. It could be seconds. For example, in a fake AV, you would see something pop up almost immediately saying, you're infected with all these viruses. We have to block your computer. You cannot use it unless you give us your credit card. You will find very soon. Or it could be like Torpig that would do anything to stay undetected and wait until you go to a banking system and then inject in your browser the HTML scripts that would actually take your credential and send them to Russia. And you would never notice anything. So it's very difficult to protect yourself. Sincerely, the list of things that I told you, two-factor authentication, super good. Every time you have to log into, I have to log into Gmail, I have a little authenticator, they give me a phone number, I put them in, it's a pain. Everything in security is a trade-off between usability and security. Yes.
I have in the past had it where it pops up using the wrong authenticator
Mhm.
on my websites, so then I just close it and I reopen it again. So does that mean there's something sitting on the computer that, at that time?
Say that again.
Like say I have a penguin,
Mhm.
and instead of seeing a penguin, I see a cat
Mhm.
as the second authenticator, so I don't enter my password, I just close
Perfect.
the
Yeah.
browser.
Yes.
So, is there something I need to do with my computer at that moment? Is there something on my computer? So I don't know
Depends.
it.
Depends. I mean, it could be something wrong with your computer. It could be a man-in-the-middle attack. Could be somebody is sort of like filtering your information going to the bank. It could be that somebody is injecting stuff in your browser. There are so many ways in which something can happen that is wrong that it's very difficult by just saying something different happened, understanding what the problem is. But for example, sometimes it's completely impossible. When they stole a DigiNote or these Google certificates, people were going to Google, to Gmail, convinced that they were using SSL, and they were completely being sniffed. And only a guy that went there and say, "Oh, somebody did double check the certificate, and noticed that it was different from the one from Google, but he was going to Google and there was the little lock. That's not possible." And that single person identifying that single problem started one of the largest investigation on a digital notary compromise that had ever been in the history of the internet. And sometimes it's almost impossible to see what's going on. Yes.
What do you think about the U.S. government or any country's governments being digitized?
Well, for example, let's talk about voting. Not a good idea. Please do not ever propose electronic voting. It's the wrong concept. Have paper. Okay? You do it not very often, you can do paper. You can wait a little longer for the results, but use paper. At UCSB we did a lot of penetration testing on voting machine. We broke everything.
Wow.
We were able to move around votes. In fact, we could infect a DRE so that when it gets shipped to the county, it would infect everybody else. I mean, you can do also, and it's documented. You can read. We're public documents in which we describe. And the Secretary of State of California gave us the task to do that. And because of that, you don't have digital voting machines without a paper trail anymore. They've been outlawed in California. We did the same thing for the state of Ohio. And so now in Ohio, some things have been put back. There are some problems. And, we'll see. Especially when it's such a close election like the one that we have. If you can move a few thousand votes, you can really decide who gets elected as the President of the United States. So don't do it.
You
Yes?
said there's security companies that are coming to you looking for new graduates. What's would you be able to quote a starting salary for somebody that just graduated computer science with an emphasis in security?
Okay, so I would say if you are, this is my first-hand knowledge, so I'm telling you, I don't know statistics, I tell you what I see of my students. So I would say bachelor degree, you could get something between 70 and 90. If you have a master's, between probably 80 and 110. If you have a PhD, bets are off. Probably, depending on what your skills are, 160, 180. Recently, one of the PhD students that came out of that got offered by a Wall Street firm, PhD student, I'm saying $350,000. And I was like, okay, maybe I should go back and get a PhD again, you know. But this is also a very good PhD student, so they were using them. They used them more for their programming skill and modeling, and but I would say that.
Get the degree.
I mean, one of my students from
Get a bachelor's
PhD,
at
his name is
least.
Brett. He came out, and I would say he got offers in the range from 150 to I think more than 200, and from a lot of different places. And you know, I asked, "Hey, come work with me." I said, "No way, you pay too little."
Does George Washington University have an interesting program?
GW? You mean GW in DC?
Mhm.
Yeah, they actually have a good emphasis on security. I actually knew very well the Chief Information Officer or Chief Security Officer, the CSO there. They have a lot of programs, and they have the very good connection, of course, to the government.
Mhm.
There are a lot of scholarship for doing security that are for American citizens. That you know, you get sort of, you go to GW, George Mason also has programs, and if you go with this scholarship, then you have sort of like, you know, you have to go to work for the NSA or for some kind of the CIA or whatever government agency, which could be really fun. I mean, you know, working for the NSA definitely gives you access to very interesting problems and national security. I mean, this is fun stuff. I never get to see it. I mean, now I'm a citizen, but until a few years ago, whenever I would go with this Department of Defense, I had somebody, you know, coming with me because it was one of the enemy. now I'm one of the enemies. Yes.
What area of mathematics is best for leading into developing algorithms?
Great question. Yeah, that's difficult. I would say complexity theory. You know, oftentimes understanding theoretically what is the complexity associated with an algorithm, it's what allows you to understand if you can scale it up. Because a lot of the work that we're going to do in the future is going to be big data work. So we have these, you know, NoSQL databases with, you know, hundreds of petabytes of data. And you cannot have something that is, you know, exponential in time, because yeah, you can process this data. It will only take 2 times the age of the universe. You're like, I have less time than that. I want a result in 3 minutes. And I'm like, okay, then I have to find another algorithm. So understanding complexity, which is a very theoretical concept, but applies to everyday tasks. And you know, there are things that work well when you have 5 elements, but if you have, you know, 5 billion, not good enough. I have a friend that, I don't know if you heard about the Facebook, everybody's 4 distance from each other. Have you read that article? That is, you know, that was difficult because they have this immense graph of people knowing each other, and you want to run an algorithm on that determines what is the average distance between people. And it's incredibly complex. And so actually a mathematician, whose name is Giovanni Vigna, my brother, actually did that algorithm and did that study. So, you know, he's a math guy. I'm an engineer. My degree is in electronic engineering. And so I went from the low level up to the software, when my brother studied math and went down to the software. So we sort of met in the middle. He always tells me that I have bits under my fingernails because I'm, you know, too low level. I think it's a fun place to be. Yes.
Well, my question would have to do with, when you went into security, what kind of backgrounds? I noticed there's a lot of different AS programs here. They have like information, computer science versus programming. So how much programming do you need to go into security, or is that?
A lot.
A lot?
Programming is everything. I cannot stress you more, programming is everything. Knowing how to program allows you to do everything. Because then, you know, you say, oh, I know how to do it. It's not just, oh, I would like to have a beautiful website. No, I can sit down and do it. Can you write PHP code? You should be able to write PHP. It's a crappy language, but you can set up a website in 10 minutes, and it's what Zuckerberg did, and now has made a little bit of money. And Python. In Python, if you know how to program, you can put together very fast, very, very good application. You can go on Google App Engine and using Python create on the cloud this amazing application in the matters of hours. You have to know how to code, and there is no two ways around it. People, it's funny. I was talking to actually an intern in my lab that came from Italy, and he was frustrated because I came because I want to do more forensics thing, but everything that I have to do involves coding, and I don't really know how to code. And I say, you know what? I cannot help you here. I mean, everything needs to be coded. Today, if you're doing forensics, you're not going to look at stuff. You're going to write program that process the logs of a few hundred computers and identifies which of these logins log from 2 IPs at times with GOP location where nobody could fly that fast. You cannot do that by looking at the logs. You have to write a program, extract all the logins, see from which IP there were the logins, do GeoIP, so you find out where that IP address is located physically on the world, and then say, oh, this guy just logged in first from India and 2 hours later from LA. That's just impossible. You will not be able to do that looking at data. You have to write a piece of code that does it. So everything is always data structures and algorithms and complexity. Yes?
I was wondering what you thought of the fact that a lot of the hardware that the computers we use today is not made in the United States.
Very, very good question. Yeah, the American government is freaked out of their mind, and we actually have another DARPA program trying to identify backdoors in firmware of printers, because suddenly printers are put in the White House office, and there is a nice piece of firmware with a lot of security holes because it's not a super security piece, but it's in that office, and they don't like that. Suddenly we have warfighters in Iraq with Android with applications that leak their GPS location. Not very good if you are somebody who's going around Kandahar and doesn't want to really be spotted. So there are all these problems, and there is no easy solution. It's program at the end. It's program analysis, which is in general I would call it an undecidable problem. It's impossible. It's been demonstrated that it's impossible to write a program that tells you if a program does a certain thing. It's impossible. You can get close to it using a bunch of tricks, but in theory, to do that reliably, it's impossible. It's proven. You cannot do it. And so all computer science, especially with these undecidable problems, is trying to get as close as possible. So that it's really, really hard to escape. But to say that for sure, one of the Alan Madsen Turing, one thing that he proved is that you cannot prove that a program, in general, if a simple program, yes, but you cannot make an algorithm that proves that a program finishes. You cannot tell if this algorithm will run forever or not. It's impossible. You cannot write an algorithm that tells you if an algorithm terminates. That means that you can never write an algorithm that tells you what the software does. You can look at it and say, well, in these very simple cases, I actually can tell you. But in general case, you cannot do it. So it's always trying to get a little better at what we do. A little better search engine, a little better crawler, a little better database. But we will never get to perfection. And that's great, because we will never run out of the job. All right? Oh, one more question.
How can I start learning about network security?
Great question. And I would say there are several resources. Of course, if you can get a university class, take it. That would be always a good start. Google is your friend. So I personally like something, I know this is the engineer in me. but there is, and I don't get any revenue from these books that I'm going to tell you about right now. There is a series that's called Hacking Exposed. Okay, sounds like I'm telling you the recipe to cook nitroglycerin, but it's actually a book that you can find at Borders before it went out of business. But now you can go. I don't know. We don't have a bookstore anymore apart from Chaucer's, I guess. But there is this Hacking Exposed, and the main book. There are several Hacking Exposed web application. Hacking Exposed this. No, the main Hacking Exposed is very nice because it tells you the various aspects of security from the point of view of tools. So it tells, oh, you want to find out how to find out the open ports on a host, you would use Nmap, and it tells you how to use it. So you can set up something at home, go through this book, and learn more about the tools. That will give you the first sort of operational skills to actually understand what's going on, and that will open a ton of other questions, like, what the hell is Nmap? And then you do Google Nmap. You know, we always say, read the fine manual. Read, go to Google. You know, see what's there. There's a ton of information. So start with that book if you want to learn something, and use those tools, see what they do, install them, try them, and ask more questions. And ask them to Google, and you'll find the answer. But that's a good start. It's more effective than giving you a list of 20 books to read. Install Linux. Learn Linux. It's ridiculous that not every computer scientist that graduates and never used Linux, I would say, failed completely his mission in computer science. Because Linux is the most accessible, free, easy to use Unix machine that you can put your hands on. I mean, I use a Mac, but all my development is a virtual machine with Linux on. I use Mac because it's pretty. For other stuff other than writing code. By the moment I have to write code, I have Eclipse on Linux with PyDev, with all my PyLint and all my tools to make sure that my software is good, tested, working right, etc., etc. So Linux is the way. If you want to be a developer, Linux. Unless you want to develop, irrelevant stuff like Windows applications. Yes.
So what program do you use to create that virtual environment?
VMware Fusion. I would suggest that you don't use that. Choose VirtualBox because it's free and it works fine. I have to use VMware on a Mac because if I use a very large screen, I need a virtual machine that is able to deal with high resolution. But any virtualization environment, Parallels, VirtualBox, VMware, will allow you on a Windows machine or on a Mac to run a Linux machine. And you can do all the experiments you want, you can crash it, and you can snapshot it and restore the snapshot and you're back where you were, no problems. It's fantastic. Learn virtualization because that's the future. Everything, we sell products and they're all virtual appliances. We don't sell the physical box anymore. We sell you a VMware machine that you put in the cloud. So learning how to use virtualization, super important skill. Yes?
I don't know if this is a good question, but I'd like to hear more about your story. You're from Italy, right?
Yes.
Yeah?
I am Italian, born and raised in Italy. I went to high school and I was always into computers since I was even before, in junior high and elementary school, loved computers. Went to high school. It was not very cool to be a geek in high school, so you have to hide it a little bit. But then you're good in math, and so I wanted to do either math or computer science or engineering. But then I decided I wanted to build robots because I watched Star Wars. And so suddenly I need to do, D3BO, I have to build that thing. And so I go to engineering. And after 2 classes on automatic controls that were supposed to be robotics, I hate this. This is the most boring stuff. Or those algorithms where, you put the force and then there is the movement of the arm. I don't want to do this. But I had to write a program, and I was like, I love programming. And so I started taking programming classes, and I took the software engineering sort of emphasis in electronic engineering. And so it was all about software development. And then I started doing all about security, and I started developing at home security stuff, like kernel extensions for Linux to, detect rogue processes and things that nobody asked me to do, but I love to do. And I met with other likely-minded geeks, and we would spend endless night doing the most inane things with security, and some stuff semi-legal, but very fun. In Italy, there was no laws, so for computer crimes. So we weren't doing anything really bad. But let's say we were accessing the internet in a way that wasn't proper because we wanted really to go on the internet, but in Italy at that time there wasn't really access, and the only access was the university. The university was difficult to get access, etc., etc. So, long story short, I didn't get to jail. And I was finishing my degree in engineering, and I said, I don't want to live. I don't want to get a job. I want to do this stuff. I want to do research. I love, trying new stuff, crazy stuff. And the cool thing of research, if you become a researcher, you don't have to do stuff that has sense. You can say, hey, I want to study. We say with my students say, let's study. How difficult? Who plays Magic the Gathering? You do, perfect. Magic the Gathering. I didn't know anything about it. It's a card game with big trolls and wizards and things that people play. And so I saw my kids, my students playing, and I was like, what is that? Oh, this game. And I'm trying to understand. Some of the cards are worth thousands of dollars. Okay, so I got my lab say, guys, we're in the job of falsifying very expensive card of Magic the Gathering to write a research paper to show that this economy based on scarcity is the wrong economy. And so we went to, big printing companies, say, we're a research team, we're trying to falsify these cards, tell us what they're made, and we do this research. It ended up being not really possible for a number of reasons. But you can have this, if you're a researcher, you can do this crazy stuff. It's awesome. Of course, it is a lot of work for, you don't go to work for Wall Street, so instead of making $300,000 a year, you make a lot less, but you have more fun, you have more freedom. So if you really like research, and I did, I decided to do my PhD, and then they invited me at UCSB to be a postdoc, and then they say, please stay, and so I stayed. That was October 97, so 15 years ago. Long time. That's my story. All right, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Very good question.